know, don't
What? We know what?
we? We know what happens to today when it becomes yesterday. It waits for them. It waits for them. The timekeepers of eternity, always following behind, cleaning up the mess in the most efficient way possible. By eating it.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Book by Book. I'm your host Scott, but I'm not alone. Tobie's here with me. This episode we're talking about Stephen King's The Langoliers, one of 4 novellas, part of a compilation titled 4 Past Midnight. This is going to be a pretty spoiler-heavy episode, so if that's okay with you, continue on and I'll see you on the other side.
We are, which is
of anthology he did of novellas.
mm-hmm.
This is one of 4.
Yeah, first one in the book.
Right. It's fairly unknown.
Yeah,
It's
relatively.
many people who have heard of it.
It's not massive. You don't, when you think of Stephen King, you don't think, oh, Langoliers. But then I would argue none. Well, actually, I was going to say I could argue that none of his novellas really you don't put with Stephen King, and technically that's true. But also, some of the biggest and best films that people regard as classics are Stephen King novels, like Stand By Me and Shawshank Redemption. But would you, when you say that, you don't necessarily think, oh, Stephen King, unless you're a Stephen King fan. Some people are quite shocked to find out that Stephen King wrote Rita Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption.
And even The Lawnmower Man.
And The Lawnmower Man, yeah.
I guess those ones are given a lot of freedom to run.
Yeah.
They're shorter ones.
He isn't really renowned for his novellas, his shorts, but they made really good films.
Right, and he has done a lot of them. He's got quite a few short story books.
Can you name them all without looking them up?
His short story collections? No, I can't.
Okay, here we go. Different Seasons, Night Shift, Skeleton Crew. Is Skeleton Crew a novella book?
I think it's Skeleton Key.
Yeah, okay, Skeleton Key. Just After Sunset, 4 Past Midnight, Full Dark No Stars, Bazaar of Bad Dreams, Nightmare and Dreamscapes.
And the new one.
If It Bleeds. Yes. Okay, so yeah, we're doing 4 Past Midnight, which is the second of novellas? No, third of his novellas.
Okay, like he does, the editions I have, he often, each story has a little backstory. Like when I read Skeleton Crew, there was at least a page on where that's from and where it came from.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to this one, it seems like he doesn't write to have a book of novellas. He just writes some stories that he doesn't know what to do with.
Yeah, kind of.
Like he finds a way to sort of stick some that fit together. And
he is quite a fan of the short story form as well.
I've read enough of him to know that often it feels like he's testing things out, like certain themes, rhyming sayings, characters will kind of come back in larger book form.
Yeah.
Interesting. But yes, let's do the Langoliers, which we
Langoliers. And magnifique.
Now there was a TV movie made of it,
which I also watched very recently.
I think I watched this when I was young.
I remember seeing it when I was young, but not like for any.
Right, I think I stayed up late on a Sunday night and it came on and it just filled that spot perfectly. And amazingly, I think as you said, somehow it's 3 hours long.
Yeah.
But it is 2 parts of a miniseries.
The devil.
Right.
It's a short story. So the story in the book, there's the length of the book for viewers. That is pretty much the length of the story plus a small introduction. So it's not a massive story.
It's about 300 words, mate. 300 pages.
That's a really short story. Yeah, 300 pages, just under.
But it reads fast as well, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
When you say it
reads quickly.
That's kind of a good length for a book. But this is one of his that just goes quick.
There's always something happening. They're always moving forward. Not as the case maybe.
So the open plot, should we just go into plot?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because for a short novel, there's a lot of characters.
There is a lot of characters,
There's a
but I don't necessarily need to know everybody. But they
no,
all fit to
but
play.
they are fun.
Yeah. There's some cracking characters in there.
Why don't you take us through the plot and I'll interject.
Okay, so it's about a pilot who has just recently landed at Boston, I believe. Has just had a hairy flight, so he's a bit shaken. They arrive, they land, and there's a knock on the cabin, and this guy comes in and goes, "Can I have a word with you? Bad news." And it turns out his wife's just died. So he then has to get what they call a deadhead, or he'll be a deadhead, but a red-eye flight back from Boston to LA that night to be back and sort out all the things that need sorting out with his recently.
This is Brian Engel.
Yes.
Engel, not Eagle, right? It's not two on the nose.
Oh, what Brian Engel is in the character? Yes, that is Brian Engel. Yeah. Sorry, you'll have to do the character names. I can't remember. So he then gets on another flight straight out as a passenger. All the other passengers get on. There's a selection of people. Like the plane is relatively full, not bursting, but pretty full. Takes off. Everything goes well. He falls asleep, and then shortly after, he is awoken by the screams of a blind girl who was one of the passengers. He goes to sort of find out what's going on. By moving, he realizes that while he's been asleep, something's happened on the plane, because most of the passengers and all of the staff have vanished, and the plane is still in the air, still flying, but everybody else is gone. Right. From him and this blind girl. And then as it transpires, there's a few more characters still on the plane who are also asleep.
We're in this kind of ghost plane scenario. So the blind girl, Dana. You get her point of view, which is kind of fun. She sort of wakes up and grabs stuff. Everything's been left behind. Like not only are people missing, but purses, wallets are missing, and she basically grabs a wig, which she thinks is a scalp, and screams the plane down.
It's really good, actually, that section where you experience it through the eyes or through the senses of the blind girl.
Right.
It's introduced because what he does really well is he gives you a snapshot of each character experiences of where they were just before they were asleep, and all that sort of thing, what they were thinking of or dreaming of, and all that.
Right.
Really nice insight to some of the characters.
I do have a lot more to say on Dana, but we'll get to that as we come across it.
So you got Brian Engel, you got Dana, then you got another guy called Don Gaffney.
Right. Which one
wakes up? He's So I'll quickly run through the character names I can remember. So these are the people that are left on the plane. Obviously, the pilot, Brian Engel, Dana, the blind girl, Don Gaffney.
What's his MO, the Don Gaffney guy? Is he the violinist or is he the...
No, that's Albert, the violinist, isn't it?
Okay, right. The quite young guy.
The student violinist is Albert. Then you've got Bethany, who's just like this girl who is running away, I believe, from something.
Is she a teenager?
Yeah, the teenager, the one that gets with Albert in the end.
Right.
Then you've got Nick Hopewell, who's the English spy, secret agent, who's brilliantly in the TV movie.
He is English. And if you forget, you will be reminded that he is English.
Yeah.
Often.
What else? Who else? Sorry. How could you forget Craig Toomey? Craig Toomey. The nemesis to the whole entire people that are on the plane. Absolute backcake.
Right. This is another thing I have strong thoughts on, but we will get to this.
So basically, that's there's one other guy who's a writer.
Right. Is it Bob?
Bob. Yes. Bob.
Yeah. There's a myriad of. I think the blind girl quickly latches on to a teacher.
Yes. Yeah.
And she has a not strange, but
she's up and running away to meet some guy, isn't she, on a dating agency? Yeah,
it sort of manifests that she is answering to the personal ad.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess in this day and age, you kind of shrug that.
Yeah.
But when this book was written,
this is before.
I'm imagining that was pretty pioneering of
Yeah.
date apps and
The
such
internet
things.
wasn't a big thing back then.
Right. Okay. Yeah. But she's pretty shy about that for most of the book because she's embarrassed that she's
Lied about it.
blind to something she doesn't know.
So anyway, we've got all these people. They're on this plane, and everybody else has disappeared, and all that's left is like false teeth, coins, handbags, purses, wigs. That's
Right. Not just things they could have left behind. It's.
No.
I think they find a pacemaker. Right.
There's a pacemaker. There's the molars of somebody's jawline.
Right. Right.
All of it, just all those tangible bits left behind, but their clothes for some reason go.
Yes.
Really explained, but
Because their first instinct is that they landed.
they landed.
One of them woke up, and they just took off again.
Yeah, and it's all part of the government conspiracy.
Right. There's a lot of different reactions.
Mm-hmm. So they all get together and they're having this big sort of like, oh my God, what's happened? Where is everybody? And panicking. And then this sort of calm settles in. And then the pilot goes, I need to go and check. And he goes up to the front. They kick the door through him and Nick Hopewell to find out there's nobody flying the plane. So obviously the pilot then kicks into pilot mode and tries to contact loads of people and see if there's anybody out there. When he radios to the airports and everything, there's no reply. It's just static on all channels, even military channels, which have constantly got chatter on. Everything's just quiet. It's as if the planet has disappeared, although they can see it. But
they're functioning but flying blind.
Yes, exactly. And then all while this happening, obviously there's this character called Craig Toomey, who is highly strung, to say the least. Again, played brilliantly in the TV movie. Probably the best bit about the TV movie, actually. So he's highly strung. He's got a history of abuse from his father and his mother that's quite harrowing and really sort of pulls on the heartstrings, makes you feel for this character, despite the odious contempt he has for everybody else on the plane.
Right.
As humans, as a species, there's a lot of hatred going on in this guy.
Because he starts off just obnoxious.
Yeah.
And he's basically threatening to sue everyone, and he's obsessed with his business meeting in the morning.
Yeah. In LA or Boston, I think it is, isn't it?
Right.
So he then accosts the pilot, Nick Engel. Well, not Nick Engel, the other guy.
Brian.
Yeah, Brian Engel, and says, you need to take me here. I'm not going anywhere else, because by this point, Brian, the pilot, has decided that they can't land at where they were going to originally go because there's nobody. It appears that there's nobody but there. If there is somebody there, there'll be too much traffic, and it's likely to cause a massive accident over a populated space. So he takes the executive decision to fly the plane to a lesser known airport that's going to be quieter where they can land, which is Bangor, Maine.
High points if you can guess where this flight might be going.
Yeah, Castle Rock, probably. But yeah, so he ends up they go there, and Craig Toomey's not happy about this, so he tries to kick off and gets more and more agitated, and then Nick Hopewell does this secret agent move, which is grab him by the nose, and threatens to punch the lights out. So he backs down, goes and sits down, and then just starts tearing a paper. The strips he does to calm himself down. This is with the help of Don Gaffney, obviously, but he takes him and sits him down and buckles him in. And he just sits there and stews for a bit. And then you've got Bob and Albert, our violinist student, and Bob the writer, who are just spitballing about what's happened to themselves.
I'm having fun with this one, right? The writer especially.
Yeah.
He's
on the money.
Yeah, he literally comes up with a theory for every scenario.
Yeah.
It's pretty fun. He literally just, I don't know if he nails it.
What if it's this, but what if it's that? But it could be this.
He's almost monologuing a book he's writing.
Yeah. So they're flying. They decide to go to Bangor, Maine, and land there. They drop below the clouds. Obviously, there's a point where they fly over Denver, and there's no lights on the surface. That's why they think that
right.
Big has gone on like a nuclear war or something. And they land at Bangor, Maine. They get out the plane, and everything is off.
Right, and they don't quite know why, or they
can't
can't put their finger on it, right?
They can't put their finger on it.
The noise, the
There's
taste, the colour.
something very fundamentally wrong, apart from the fact there's no people anywhere in the entire airport, and it's just bizarre. So they head into the airport to try and decide what to do next, find people, get some food, work stuff out. And while they're heading from the plane to the airport, Dana, the blind girl, goes, "Can you hear this? Can you hear that sound?" And she's not quite able to put a finger on what it is or where it's coming from, but there's a sound that's miles off in the distance because the senses are heightened. It sounds like Rice Krispies popping. That's how
Right.
he describes it.
I'm not going to lie, that was ludicrous.
Yeah.
Because it's not only described as that, but it's described as that horrible sound, like the Krispies popping.
There's cereal sound. But no, there's what is a counterpoint to your on the line is that from the perception of a child, that's what you would place it against. But if you're an adult, you would hear static electricity or something like that. For her, that sounds like Rice Krispies popping because that's what she hears the most. Whereas for an adult, she's probably stopped eating Rice Krispies and heard electricity static or something like that. I heard that somewhere. I thought, actually, that's quite a good point. But she can hear this sound and it sounds on her, she doesn't like it. It unsettles her to a very core. They head into the airport and then go up to a canteen area to sit down, chill out and relax, find out what's going on and make a plan. And while they're all doing that, Craig Toomey decides, I'm not having any of this, and then he disappears off with the chatter in his head and the madness going on.
Right. We get the name of the Langoliers, right?
Yeah, I think he's mentioned the Langoliers are coming or something like that. But at that point, they put it down to him just being mad because that's what his dad called the beasts that ate up lazy children.
Yeah, basically, his parents were particularly hard on him. Just bums and layabouts. He sort of gave him a fairy tale of that these people are just like worthless to society and will become nothing. And somehow the name Langoliers just came to represent not giving it everything and failure.
Yeah.
Toomey's pretty wavy and ranty in the airport, and he's kind of showing that the Langoliers are going to come and get you. I think at this stage we get a sense that Dana kind of has the shining, right?
Yeah.
She kind of knows what's going on with Toomey. Like when everyone else is pretty angry at him, she's like, "You have to leave him alone. It's not his fault." Yeah. She can see the world through his eyes.
Yes.
And he thinks they're all ugly.
Yeah. Which again, that's why I think the only difference between the TV movie and the book is the visualization of that and what happens to his vision of people. But so he's gone off to the security office to find a gun, which he finds, and then heads back to the crew or to the rest of the people to extract or demand that they fly him to Boston. Right. Bob has come up with another ingenious theory that solves all their problems and answers every question that they all have. There's a whole thing with matches, and basically what it turns out is that the environment that they're in, or the world that they're in, the food tastes tasteless. Right. Tasteless. The colours of the palette and the colours of the environment have just dimmed slightly. It's like everybody's just turned the lights off. Fuel, matches, and all that sort of thing don't light. They're sort of just right. Whereas Bethany, who is a smoker in the book and the film, has a book of matches which she uses to light a cigarette that she's smoking, and her matches work fine. But anything from the world that they've landed in just doesn't do the same. Doesn't act the same.
Right. Everything from the plane is functioning, but everything outside
is flat. Been better days. So then they come to this conclusion that something is going on with the area they're at. Craig Toomey rocks up with his gun, takes Bethany hostage, demands to be flown to Nick Hope. I was like, nobody move, nobody hit him, like leave him. Albert's like, yeah, okay, I'm going to listen, but I'm going to hold my violin case to my side and use it as a bat when I'm ready. Oh, here's the time. Bethany bites Mr. Toomey's arm. Albert steps in with his violin case like some heroic knight and goes to clobber Mr. Toomey with it, but gets shot. The gun goes off. Toomey takes a violin head to the case to the head, goes down. Albert goes down with the bullet wound, or as we think is a bullet wound, but it turns out because the gun was from the time period or the world that they're in, there was no ignition. So the bullet
was splatters
out and bounces off his chest and just lands on the floor with a pathetic whimper. And Albert's fine. Mr. Toomey not so much, got a bruise to the head. And old Nick Hopewell ties him up with a piece of rope. And then they decide to split and go off and do different things. I can't remember exactly what happens there, but Dana then has another, oh, can you hear the sound? It's getting closer, getting closer.
We need to stay and watch Toomey because he's tied up.
Yes, Dana has the hears the sound and then wanders off, and then a load of them go with her, and then a couple stay behind to listen to check on Toomey, make sure he doesn't try to do anything dodgy. So they all go off, and that's when she says that her famous line, the cereal sound. Can you hear the cereal sound? Because they can just start to faintly hear it in the background.
Yeah, they haven't really trusted her. At least half of them have just thought she's a blind, scared girl. She's just,
she's only 12, I think.
Right.
Yeah. The people that are supposed to be looking after Craig Toomey do a bad job. He gets away and goes and hides. Bethany, the teacher lady and Dana decide to go back and check on Mr. Toomey because the people that were supposed to be looking after him had come down to see what was going on. So they're all mesmerised by this incoming sound, while Dana, the blind girl, and the teacher woman go off to check on Mr. Toomey. When they get back there, he's gone, but Dana can hear him or sense him, and she goes, "Be careful, he's over there behind the thing." And so she starts to walk up to him and say, "Mr. Toomey, it's okay, it's fine," and everything. The whole while he's getting the voice of his dad going, "You're just rubbish, you're lazy, the Langoliers are going to come and get you and eat you. You're going to amount to nothing, you need to get to Boston, this meeting is so important." Rah, 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 rah. So this chat is going on in his head. He goes slowly and more mad, grabs a knife off the side and charges Dana, rams the blade into her chest and legs it.
He's not doing much to help the team.
Nor his own causes, no. So Dana goes down with the blade in her. Toomey runs off and hides, and everybody else comes back and, oh my god, we need to do this. So Nick Hopewell charges Don Gaffney and the other guy, I can't remember his name, Albert, the violinist, to go and find a stretcher. And
the plan is to get back on the plane.
They've decided they're going to get back on the plane, refuel, take off, and try and find somewhere else to land.
So they do an experiment, right? Like they take some of the matches that don't work, and on the aeroplane.
I think that is that happening while.
I think that's paralleling when.
Yeah, that's paralleling where Dana in her bandages and everything. I think so. Brian Eagle, Bob. No, because Albert goes out to the plane as well, doesn't he? I think that comes slightly after. I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, so there's Nick Hopewell charges a couple with them to go and find some stretchers.
Right.
They bandage up Dana by moving her around with the blood because the blade's quite deep. She's still alive, but the blade's quite deep. Take the blade out, bandage her up and everything. All the while, Don Gaffney and this other Albert are going in, who's got a toaster in the end of a pillowcase type thing in his for a weapon, because they don't know where, obviously, Toomey is.
Prison style.
And they go into a room that just happens to be the same room that Toomey went into. Don Gaffney goes in first, and Albert, just slowly following in, notices on the corner of a table strips of paper that have been torn out of a magazine in a pile, and he instantly knows that Craig Toomey was in the room, and screams out to Don, "He's in here." Obviously, Craig Toomey by this point is behind the door, comes out and stabs him as well, and then turns the blade on to Albert, who's backing out the room, and he's swinging his little toaster in lumps him around the head with it, lumps him a couple more times, caves his face in, and proper leaves him just mashed on the floor. goes and spews up, and then Nick Hopewell comes down from fixing Dana up top, and goes into the room, gets a stretcher with Albert, checks on Don, who's dead, sends Albert up with a stretcher, and Mr. Toomey is still on the floor. Before Nick Hopewell left Dana up top, she said, "Don't you kill him, don't you kill him, we need him, don't you kill him, promise me you won't kill him." And Nick's like, yeah, sure. And then when he gets down there, he's going to kill him because he sent off Albert with the stretcher, and as he goes to suffocate him, he hears Dana's voice in his head saying, "Don't kill him, we need him." So he just stops and leaves him. The whole while this is happening, on the plane, Brian, the pilot, and a couple of other people I can't remember the names of are on there, and they've formulated an idea that the stuff from the plane is still working and from a present time, and the stuff outside the plane is from the past. So the writer guys formulated this idea that the world that they've landed in is the past, and it just left. It's empty. Everybody's moved on into another version of time.
Right.
So, and everything's gone with it, but stuff has stayed behind, and it's just because it's in the past. It doesn't need its taste. It doesn't need its color. It doesn't need anything. It's just all fading out of existence, basically.
I think something, I guess, mildly key is at the beginning. There's little talks of, you can see the Aurora.
The birds, yes.
They're skeptical of because it's that low down. And that's kind of his theory.
Yeah, yes. That's a rip in time, in essence. And they've travelled from this rip in time to the past, but only by 15 minutes, I think it was, or half an hour or something. But while they're there in the past, and all of this is happening, day to night cycles are getting quicker, especially that one. It sort of goes, when they land, it was like a couple of hours later, but to them it feels like it's mid-afternoon, and then it feels like it's evening, and that sort of thing, really, really quickly. But on the plane, they work out that if they were to bring stuff from that time, the outside the plane time, onto the plane, it catches up with the present,
right,
for a couple of minutes, and then so they've got beer that's flat, but they open it on the plane, and then after a while, the bubbles appear, the flavour comes back.
Right. I think it's something like we bought our own pocket of time.
Yeah,
will work for us.
Exactly. So that's how they get around the fact that the fuel that they're pumping onto the plane is from the past and probably won't ignite because none of it works like the matches didn't. But because they're pumping it into the present, or their pocket of time, which is the present, after a while it will become normal fuel, and then
But there's a kind of
they hope
time pressure, right? They don't trust that it's going to last forever. They kind of make haste.
Yes. So all this time, while Dana's been stabbed and being fixed, and they're on the plane working out what the hell's going on and why the fuel will work and why what they're planning is going to work. The sound of the cereal is getting closer and closer and closer. So close, in fact, that they feel like they've only got like less than a couple of hours, and it's going to take at least 2 hours to fill the plane with enough fuel. So they make haste, they speed along their processes and bring Dana out to the plane, get her on the plane.
Right, because they haven't...
fuel and everything, and the whole time Toomey's still unconscious, but is alive in the airport. And the cereal sound is getting closer and closer and closer. So Dana, while the plane is being refueled, starts calling out to Toomey because the cereal sound is getting so close that she's starting to worry along with everybody else, and tells Craig Toomey, now is the time, you need to get up, you need to go to the board meeting. The board are here, they've come all the way from Boston to Bangor, Maine to enable you to achieve your goal of telling them that you swindled them out of £40 million and you did it deliberately, and you want the sack so that you can be free of this constant and utter pressure that you find yourself under from your dad, from the work, from everything, from society. You will be free of all of that because you've screwed them all over. You can laugh in their faces and leave. So he is like, okay, that's exactly what I can't believe you managed to happen. Who are you? Are you the angel of light? And she's like, yes, I'm the angel of light. And this is all being done psychopathically with the shine. So he stumbles up with his caved in face and battered, bruised ribs and everything, crawls out of the airport. The sound is getting closer and closer and closer, and it's on the horizon now. So trees are starting to be pulled, pylons are coming down. You can just see the horizon slowly disappearing.
Right.
He starts to get out of the airport, hits the tarmac. The plane is being fueled, and they've still got a little bit of time before the fuel's going to be enough to get them back through the rip and then home. Dana's like, run, you fool, run. We need you. We need you. Craig Toomey starts running across the tarmac. The Langoliers appear as the most bizarre end of movie book bad guy I think I've ever read or heard or seen in my entire life. I don't know what you want to say on the Langoliers, but
So basically, from the horizon, they see these dots,
bonkers.
and when they come clear, they are, I guess, maybe 3-4 times the size of a big beach ball, a giant beach ball, and they just sort of open up with rows and rows and rows of teeth. And they kind of fly, and they just eat everything up.
And they just they strip the land basically in like strips. So one Langolier will take a small section of the land while it eats it, and another Langolier will take another strip. Yeah, like Pac-Man, exactly like
landscape.
That's a great way of describing the Langoliers. They're like 3D Pac-Men with metal teeth. One's red and one's blue. That's how it's described in the book. And they basically eat the environment. At that point, there's only 2 of them. They're sort of crisscrossing and doing this and bouncing and just munching everything. And they're heading towards the plane. The fuel has just finally reached what they needed to get in. They decouple the plane. The Langoliers are chomping away the scenery. Everybody's like, "Oh my God, what the hell is going on? Where's the strip gone? Where's the build? Where's the trees? Where's?" And then Craig Toomey runs past them, going, "Ah! I've got to get to my board." He gets on the board. He gets to the board table, which has just magically appeared in this environment at the end of the runway because it's a shine apparition of Dana and the madness of Toomey. And he runs out, gets to the board meeting, tells them what he's done at this board meeting. The Langoliers see him, and that's the distraction, enough of a distraction for them on the plane to start the plane and get it moving.
So they turn and go for Toomey.
Yeah, they turn and go for Toomey. Toomey then sort of snaps out of his vision, I guess. Plane starts moving, realizes that it was all a lie, and that the Langoliers are literally there right in front of him, about to chomp, and turns and runs. While he's running away, the Langoliers eat his ankles.
Right.
So he falls over and his ankle's gone. There's no blood or anything. It's cauterized perfectly, but it's just like as if they were never there. And then he slowly gets munched away by these Langoliers. And then while the plane's running off down the runway, millions of Langoliers start stripping the environment away, closing in around them, just coming at them from all directions. This plane's hurtling down the runway. Langoliers are in the windows down either side, just stripping the environment away, crisscrossing in front of the plane. The plane has to fly over just run over this piece of runway that was there and then suddenly isn't, because the Langoliers as it does, and then just before it gets to the end of the runway, into the sky as the Langoliers underneath.
Right, and get to watch from the sky.
So close. And then they're in the sky, and they've plotted a reverse path of what they took to get to where they were. So they're hoping that by following it exactly on the way back, they will fly through what they flew through to get them there, and they'll rejoin their time. That's their thinking. So they head there.
Back the way they came, basically.
Yeah, back the way they came. Unfortunately, Dana then dies from her wounds, but she's happy because she got to see through the eyes of Craig Toomey, and they're about to fly through this hole when they find it in space and time again, and the writer guy's like, "No, stop, you can't." Nick Hope, I was like, look, it's too late, we're doing it, sit down. And he goes, no, you don't understand, you fools, you're going to get us all killed. We were asleep. And then Nick Hope, I was like, oh, body shot to the chest. You're right. Oh, crap. Gets up, legs it up to the front of the plane. Brian, you've got to cancel. We need to get out of here because you just need to do it. We were asleep. And he's like, oh, yeah. And then the plane, just at the last minute, arcs out, misses the hole, and they circle round for a bit, trying to work out how the hell they're all going to get to sleep so that they can fly back through the gap and then wake up on the other side to land the plane.
Right.
They think about crushing pills, everybody drinking sleeping pills, and the pilot's like, we haven't got enough time for everybody to fall asleep, and they only work if you're tired, and none of us are tired, so that's not going to work. And they try and explore, and they're virtually almost out of ideas, and then Albert says something about pressure, and the pilot's like, oh my god, we could do this. If I reduce the pressure to 7 psi or something like that, everybody on the plane will faint. We can fly through, and then it will be fine. And then the woman's like, but how do we wake up on the other side? We need somebody to flick the switch to put the pressure back so we all wake up. And then Nick's like, well, somebody's going to have to stay awake to flick the switch, picks himself.
Right.
There's a bit of a romance thing going on between him and the teacher.
Yeah, they kind of hit it off.
Yeah, kind of, warm to each other throughout the book. He stays awake. Everybody else goes to sleep because he drops the pressure. He has a gas mask on. And just as he flies through, they fly through the Borealis again. He's like, oh my God, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Flick, poof, disappears. All of his jewelry and stuff fall to the ground. And after about half an hour, everybody else starts to wake up. They fly back to LA, go to land at LA, but when they're talking on the chatter again, still no return, no people. Yeah, it's still exactly the same as it was in the last place, but they were hoping something would be different. So they land at LA. But
some of them are kind of convinced, right? Like the writer is pretty confident. And we, at this stage, know there's only about 20 pages left.
Yeah. So they land at LA and they go into the airport, basically a repeat of what they did at the beginning. But the food tastes good. The drink tastes good. Everything tastes like it should. Everything looks the way it should. Everything sounds the way it should. Everything, the wind is blowing. It's as it should be, apart from the fact that there's no people. And all they can hear on the horizon is this sound. This constant getting closer. But they're not scared of it for some reason. Whereas they were terrified of the serial sound. This one, they just kind of accept it. And then they're at a point where they don't really have an awful lot of choice. They've just flown about all over the place. The writer then comes up with another amazing grasp of imagination and goes, I've got an idea. I think I know what's happening, but we need to be quick. Follow me. So they all follow him through this empty airport. And he stands against a wall on a runway, not a runway, on a walkway, but where they all stand with their backs against the walkway. And he just says, stay here, wait, and hopefully, if I'm right, something will happen. And then after a couple of minutes, the shadows and ghosts start to appear in the environment, moving quickly. Sound, this sound starts to stop being an and starts to break into sort of the sounds of conversations and people chatting and people walking and dust carts being moved and all that sort of thing. And then that becomes less translucent and more solid and more solid and more solid to the point where the people that are on the plane catch the future. So they've jumped into the future by 15 minutes and the future has caught up with them. And then they rejoin the present time and everything's okay. And that kind of, in a nutshell, is the Langoliers.
Yeah, I think so. It's kind of a happy ending for them.
Yeah,
there's a bit of a wrap up from the writer, right? The writer who is sort of philosophizing and being correct a lot, sort of wraps the book up. The end.
The end.
Doesn't sound like much when you put it like that. Climax. But
it's not, there isn't an awful lot to it, to be perfectly honest with you. But it's simple, but it works.
What
It reads so quickly as well.
What's your thoughts of overall?
Overall, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I read it really quickly, like I said. Normally, it would take me quite a while to read a book. Obviously, we're in lockdown and I've got a load of blooming time on my hands, so I've read it relatively quickly. But it felt like I was reading old school Stephen King. Not his old school Stephen King, but it felt like I was reading old school Stephen King. I thought the characters were really good. The dialogue was brilliant. The dialogue was interesting at times.
Ridiculous at other times.
Yeah, it just was a simple tale. What grasped me was the idea of everything disappearing, landing in a place that the setup was brilliant in this book.
I think
more than the ending. The ending, the payoff with all Stephen King's, and I think maybe that's a testament to horror in itself. The ending was difficult sell. Like when the Langoliers turned up and there's a red blob and a blue blob with teeth. It felt like the red car and the blue car had a race from that old Milky Way advert, but with teeth.
Right. All the red car wanted to do was stuff his face.
Yeah, exactly. It was good though. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
This is probably the most fun I've had reading One of his for a while. Very kind of old school, very Twilight Zone-ish.
Yeah.
The copy I had a little intro to his where it came from.
This one, yeah.
Right, and he said I think he's quite scared of flying.
Mm-hmm.
There was a crack in a wall on a plane he was flying at, and he just couldn't stop staring at it for an entire flight.
Yeah.
And it sort of came from there. I'd like to retell a bit of the story from a bit of a perspective shift.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to put out there that Tobie was, although quite murderous and violent and psychotic, he was also kind of a victim to, mental disability and clearly some kind of schizophrenia. And that Dana, the blind 12-year-old, is kind of the human villain for this book. Because I feel like she uses this mentally ill man's schizophrenia to convince him to run to his death, to be eaten alive, so they could save their lives.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I feel about that, really.
That's exactly what she does.
It's pretty brutal. I get that he's kind of the villain, unstable. But we also get the feeling it's not, he's a circumstance of his upbringing. And, some form of schizophrenia for sure.
Versus nurture thing, isn't it?
Right. But for her to play into his schizophrenia, to make him lead danger away, that's kind of cold-blooded.
If he hadn't plunged a blade into her, I'd agree with you. But because he basically killed her...
That's true.
She's got... I think she's got every right to go... fucking go out there and beat yourself. I'm going to survive this shit.
Yeah, but at least for him, we know it's bad. For her, we get there's no regret.
No. Yeah, that's true.
And that's something he's done a few times, where the big payoff came down to very minute detail. Like in this case, the payoff for Tobie and Dana was she needed to steer him literally a few minutes so they could get away by a few minutes.
Yeah. Tobie, I felt for Tobie. I did feel up until for the most part, all the way through, but until he stabbed Dana especially, he was really struggling. There was glimmers of a person in there that didn't want to be the person that he was being forced to be. That he'd been
right. It was kind of beyond his control, right? I mean, almost, I guess if we're playing into The Shining and pre-Control, his whole life led up to that moment, so he could save those random people.
Yeah, same with Cujo, same with Jack Torrance.
There's a multitude of characters, and it did feel like if you took a house where all the family members read a bit, and there's, say the youngest kid is 15, and you shook the house upside down to see what literary characters fell out of all the different books. He put those all in this one story, because we have a pilot, we have a British agent, a rider,
Yeah,
a drug-addled teen,
yeah.
blind girl, and it all felt like they were from a different genre melded together in this.
Yeah.
They didn't always feel like they should be there individually.
Mm.
And for me, it's kind of strange. No one took the lead role in this. You kind of pilot will be, but then he steps back.
Yeah, he literally talks about that in the book as well, doesn't he?
I don't recollect that.
The decision to step back. So he takes the lead. Brian takes the lead for the plane and the piloting side of things.
Right, yeah.
And he's like, now I'm done. Stop asking me questions.
Oh, okay, right. Because he has no answers. He's just the pilot, right? Yeah. But despite all those sort of myriad of characters, it does kind of come full circle. Everyone's use plays in, right? Like there's one character we didn't talk about because he has so little to do. And he's always played for jokes because he's sleeping.
Yeah.
He'll literally sleep through the whole book and nap in and out without any stress. But he's the reason why the writer remembers that they have to be asleep. He walks past them snoring and he wonders, how can he be sleeping? Sleeping is the key.
Yeah. That's exactly it. Yes, well remembered. His character is literally there to do just that. That's
right.
The only purpose he is there is to remind them just before they fly through that they need to be asleep, because he dies.
He does?
Yeah, you know, it doesn't, because when they get thrown about through the turbulence, he smashes his head.
Oh, of course, yes.
And then he doesn't end up in the future, does he? He doesn't off the plane with them or anything, I don't think.
It's a fun book, I'll give it that. It's very, it kind of creates a playground in its world. There's stuff like, you know, they can't get off the plane, they have to pull the emergency slide. And there's a bit of like, you go first, no, you go first. And I think that's when the pilot's like, I don't want to be in charge, you know. They can't just get into the airport, they have to climb through the luggage vendor. And just little stuff like that just makes it this strange, empty playground.
But what surprised me about the transition from book to film was the fact that, like you said earlier on, it's 3 hours long. You wouldn't have thought that story would make a 3-hour film.
No, but
it is so faithful in its recreation of the story. Like there's virtually all the lines, the dialogue lines in the book are in the film.
Right, it's like a page to
a couple or two, one or two here and there, but for the whole, everything that's said by characters in the book is said in the TV show. And in the book, it worked for me. The dialogue was good. It didn't feel clunky. It just flowed.
Yeah, you can kind of.
The TV movie, it was absolute junk.
Oh, really? You did enjoy it? I particularly enjoyed this film, but I do agree it's junk. It did feel like they had a week to shoot the entire movie, and whatever your first take was, that's what we're going with. And I guess the film, more so than the book.
But why do you think that is? Why do you think reading the script as it was in here works, but when you put it on screen and get people to deliver the lines, it sounds just awful?
Yeah, because it's not always good dialogue. When you're reading, you can forgive quirks from characters. The writer always refers to the violinist as my dear boy.
Yes.
And it doesn't particularly get tiresome. But when you're watching it, you know, like I was saying, it sort of brings to attention more that this guy is from a self-detective novel, you know, and the woman who is on the date is more from not a Harlequin novel, but like a romance novel. And the British assassin guy is more from sort of James Patterson novel. Like I think the acting, the hearing those lines out loud more than in your head brings you to the attention of how no one speaks like anyone that kind of says anything.
It's weird, isn't it? And I think that's what I found the most interesting when watching a TV movie was how the lines just don't work, but they work in the story in a book, but they just do not work when said out loud. My dear boy.
Yeah.
Nobody says that, but in the book it sounded just right. Everything was fine.
Yeah, but I guess for something so short and so many characters who have one thing to give, like you said with the sleeping guy, everyone does give that one thing and it comes around, right? Like the like there's a reason for things. The
Everything in that book happens for a reason. Yeah.
the reason that the British man is like a secret agent is because at the end someone needs to sacrifice himself to save them, and he, as an agent, has killed people, and he just kind of thinks, well,
It's balancing this.
it's my world, I can balance this out, and without that, you know what I mean. Everyone brings a little bit of purpose.
Yeah.
Even the violinist gets his moment.
He has quite a few moments actually.
Yeah, it's like I said, everyone feels like you could just shift the whole book to have them as the star.
Yeah.
But he refused to. So everyone takes their spot. And I don't know, for me, I would say equally no one stars in this book, which I guess is good.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's good it's short as a result. It'll be interesting to see. I didn't really read any reviews on the book, whether it's considered something that is past good. I know all over the book there's blurbs that say 4 stories are great and stuff. We should probably check on when it was written, but it does have that very...
It was written between, I think it's 86 and 87, the 4 stories were written, and then it was released in 88.
Okay.
And then the movie was...
time? What was before and after this in his publishing timeline?
So this is the second short story novels that he released. So before this was Carrie, Salem's Lot, The Shining, Night's Shift, The Stand, and then this.
Okay.
And that's out of his. That's a lie. Actually, he also had Christine, Pet Cemetery, It, Misery, Tommyknockers, Dark Half, and The Stand Complete Uncut Edition had been released as well.
But there's a good chance he wrote these books throughout that time, right? I know, at least in his particularly short stories one, he talks about where they were published and all over this. I think at that time, Playboy were picking up a lot of his shorts. Right.
Yeah, there was a few of them appeared in there, yeah.
Quite a sporadic publishing of his, yeah. But overall, I would give this a ludicrously high rating, like 8.5 to 9.
Brilliant.
I can't really put my finger on why I enjoyed it so much, other than I guess it doesn't take it's quite tongue-in-cheek, and it doesn't take itself too seriously, so it has fun with it, but it still kind of has that tension and it has that mystery. Whether it's your thing or not, I wonder if a lot of people reading this, when the Langoliers manifested, didn't know what to make of it, but they're also dealt with and they don't really come back. They're just the episode of those 3 chapters. Again, in the film, I guess it really shows their lack of budget. There is some pretty horrendous CGI for that era.
What do you think is like when you watch it? This is like not necessarily a book question, but more of a film question. Why is it clear that that's a TV movie or made for TV movie versus a made for cinema movie?
Oh, well, just the level of polish by far. I mean, this...
Because it was shot with good film cameras and everything. It was shot on film and everything. I've seen behind the scenes shots and stuff.
That kind of does surprise me. I mean, it felt very flat, and maybe that was an intentional thing because of the world they were living in. But when they're not in that world, it still feels quite flat. It's
for me, a lot of it is down to there's no movement in the camera.
Right, it's a lot of lockdown, right?
It's all, pretty much all lockdown, static shots, people walking through shots, and I think that's the thing that separates TV movies from proper, especially in the 90s anyway, from films. There's the movement in camera, there's just none of it. It's like pans or tilts, but no zooms, tracks, or any of that sort of thing.
I mean, King is kind of famous for having unfilmable or very tricky to film. I mean, I don't think you could make this in modern times with the VFX of modern times and make it good.
No, I don't know. I don't think
there's something hokey, I suppose, about the whole concept. A good TV episode, for sure.
It's the perfect thing for I can't sleep at 12:30, 1 in the morning. I'll just stick something on and, oh my God, what is this? I won't fall asleep. I'll watch it all and then I'll fall asleep. I'd give the Langoliers 7.5. I'd say 7.5, 7, somewhere around there.
Yeah,
What I like about it is it doesn't have a religious nut in it.
no.
For some reason, that's one of the reasons why I haven't read The Mist, is because I've seen the TV, the film of The Mist, and the religious nuts in Stephen King books really annoy me.
There's a fair amount of philosophizing in this one, and it's strange how in other books of this sort of caliber, when you get the philosophizers, it feels like you come out going, oh, you never really get an answer, but at one point this character philosophizes this, so there's a hint, but then there's also this. This one, his philosophizing kind of turns out accurate.
Yeah, the writer guy.
We're kind of meant to believe, oh, that's maybe what's happening. But also shown, yeah, that's kind of exactly what's happening.
Yeah, yeah. He is, yeah. It suffers from what he wrote about on writing, or Dance Macabre, one of the two, where the art of good horror is to keep the door locked, but and build up to what's behind the door, and then when you open the door, generally horror goes wrong because the reveal is always less than the anticipation and what the audience will put in their own mind. So they'll project what they think is behind the door throughout reading the story, and then once you open the door, it invariably doesn't live up to their expectations because they put it on a platitude or something like that.
Right.
And I think that's what this suffers from, is that, like, the sound and the build up to the Langoliers, them being on the horizon, seeing the horizon crumpling and disappearing, is foreboding. It's terrifying. But then you get these red and blue blobs that pop out and just jump away the scenery, and you're like, ah.
I mean,
it's
I guess
scarier.
it's more adventure than it is horror. Because I'm pretty sure there's no real graphic. I guess when the young girl gets stabbed is the most graphic.
And Toomey's face being caved in with his nose smashed up and stuff like that.
Oh, that's true, yeah, and he does lose a leg.
That's really quite nasty at times.
Hey, we're going to wrap it up around here. I want to thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed. Join us again for part 2 of this Stephen King novella compilation next episode. And until then, support your local bookstores and have a great day.
Of course I'm listening to you, and I know what happened to everybody here. These stupid, lazy people. The Langoliers got them.
Well, that's all very interesting, but really, right now, I don't have the time.
Time? What the hell do you know about time? Ask me about time! Ask me! Time is short, sir!